Hey guys, it's Miss Gaspy. I wanted to start reading a book out loud to you. It's one of my favorites from my childhood. It's called From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler, and it is about some kids who they run away to a museum, an art museum, and it's pretty cute. So I thought this would be a good time for you to do some of your coloring in your papers that you started yesterday. Remember, they're due tonight by 8 p.m. So if you want to just listen along while I read and work on your coloring, I'm also going to have the PowerPoint up here with some pictures. There's not too many, but about one a chapter. So if you want to glance up every once in a while, you can see what's going on with the pictures. So we're going to go ahead and start. All right. The beginning is a letter. It says, "To my lawyer Saxenberg, I can't say that I enjoyed your last visit. It was obvious that you had too much on your mind to pay any attention to what I was trying to say." Oh, wait, I think I have. Oh, yeah, here it is. "Perhaps if you had some interest in this world besides law, taxes, and your grandchildren, you could almost be a fascinating person. Almost. That last visit was the worst bore. I won't risk another dull visit for a while. So I'm having Sheldon, my chauffeur, deliver this account to your home. I've written it to explain the certain changes I want made to my last will and testament. You'll understand those changes, and a lot of other things, much better after reading it. I'm sending you a carbon copy. I'll keep the original in my file. I don't come in till I don't come in till much later, but never mind, you'll find enough to interest you until I do. You never knew that I could write this well, did you? Of course, you don't actually know yet, but you soon will. I've spent a lot of time on this file. I listened, I investigated, and I fitted the pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle. It leaves no doubt. Will Saxenberg, read and discover. Signed, Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler." So the first thing that we might notice in this page is it's old. It's written in, you can look, 1967. You can find that in the little cover, in the back of the cover. And so it mentions a carbon copy. We don't really use those anymore, but it's basically just a type of paper that had a second paper behind it that would copy whatever you wrote. So she kept one and she gave her lawyer the copy. All right, here's chapter 1. Claudia knew that she could never pull off the old-fashioned kind of running away, that is, running away in the heat of anger with a knapsack on her back. She didn't like discomfort. Even picnics were untidy and inconvenient. All those insects and the sun melting the icing on the cupcakes. Therefore, she decided that her leaving home would not just be running from someplace, but would be running to someplace, to a large place, a comfortable place, an indoor place, and preferably a beautiful place. And that's why she decided upon the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. She planned very carefully. She saved all her allowance and she chose her companion. She chose Jamie, the second youngest of her 3 younger brothers. He could be counted on to be quiet, and now and then he was good for a laugh. Besides, he was rich. Unlike most boys her age, he had never begun collecting baseball cards. He saved almost every penny he got. But Claudia waited to tell Jamie that she was deciding upon him. She couldn't count on him to be that quiet for that long. And she calculated needing that long to save her weekly allowance. It seemed senseless to run away without money. Living in the suburbs had taught her that everything costs. She had to save enough for train fare and a few expenses before she could tell Jamie or make any final plans. In the meantime, she almost forgot why she was running away, but not entirely. Claudia knew that it had to do with injustice. She was the only child and the only girl, and as so, she was subject to quite a lot of injustice. Perhaps it was because she had to both empty the dishwasher and set the table on the same night while her brothers got out of everything. And perhaps there was another reason that is more clear to me than to Claudia, a reason that has to do with the sameness of each and every week. She was bored with simply being a straight A Claudia Kincaid. She was tired of arguing with those about whose turn it was to choose the Sunday night 7:30 television show, the injustice and the monotony of everything. The fact that her allowance was so small that it took her more than 3 weeks of skipping hot fudge sundaes to save enough for train fare was another example of injustice. Since you don't drive to school, Saxonburg, you probably don't know the cost of train fare. I'll tell you, full fare one way cost $1.60. Claudia and Jamie could each travel for half of that since she was 1 month under 12 and Jamie was well under 12, being only 9. So right here, we learn who the narrator of this book is. It's somebody who is talking to another person named Saxonburg, and we just read a letter to Saxonburg in a couple pages before. So it's Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. This is what she had written. That first page we read, she sent him her letter. So this is her telling the story about Claudia. We'll keep going. Since she had intended to return home after everyone learned a lesson in Claudia appreciation, she had to save money for her return trip too, which was like full fare one way. Claudia knew that hundreds of people who lived in town worked in offices in New York City and could afford to pay full fare both ways every day, like her father. After all, Greenwich was considered an actual suburb of New York and a commuting suburb. Commuting means traveling. Even though Claudia knew that New York City was not far away, certainly not far enough to go considering the size and number of the injustices done to her, she knew that it was a good place to get lost. Her mother's ladies' club called it the city. Most of them had never ventured there. It was exhausting and it made them nervous. When she was in the 4th grade, her class had gone on a trip to visit historical places in Manhattan. Jonathan Richards' mother wouldn't let him go for fear he would get separated from the group and all the jostling that goes on in New York. Mrs. Richard, who was somewhat of a character, had said she was certain that he would, quote, come home lost, and she considered the air very bad for him to breathe. Claudia loved the city because it was so elegant. It was important and it was busy. The best place in the world to hide. She studied the maps and the tour guide book of the American Automobile Association and reviewed every field trip her class had taken. She made a specialized geography course for herself. There was even some pamphlets about the museum around the house, which she quietly researched. Claudia also decided that she must get accustomed to giving up things. Learning to do without hot fudge sundaes was good practice for her. She made do with the good humor bars her mother kept in the freezer. I would think maybe this is something from the year that this book was written. No, I can't remember. Maybe from the 60s. Maybe if it was in the freezer, maybe it's like a popsicle, good humor bar, maybe a candy bar. Normally, Claudia's hot fudge expenses were 40 cents per week. Before her decision to run away, deciding what to do with the 10 cents left over from her allowance had been the biggest adventure she'd had all week. Sometimes she didn't even have 10 cents, for she lost a nickel every time she broke one of the household rules, like forgetting to make her bed in the morning. She was certain that her allowance was the smallest of her class, and most of the other sixth graders never lost part of their pay since they had full-time maids to do the chores instead of a cleaning lady only twice a week. Once, after she had started saving, the drugstore had a special hot fudge 27 cents, the sign in the window said. She bought one. It would postpone her running away only 27 cents worth. Besides, once she made up her mind to go, she enjoyed the planning almost as much as she enjoyed spending money. Planning long and well was one of her special talents. Jamie, the chosen brother, didn't care for hot fudge sundaes, although he could have bought one at least every other week. A year and a half before, Jamie had made a big purchase. He had spent his birthday money on part of his Christmas money on a transistor radio. Does anybody know what that is? We might have to look that up. It was made in Japan, purchased from Woolworths. Occasionally, he bought a battery for it. They probably would need the radio, and that made another good reason for choosing Jamie. On Saturdays, Claudia emptied the wastebasket, a task she despised. There were so many of them. Everyone in her family had one in his bedroom and everyone in her family had his own bedroom and a wastebasket, except for her mother and father, who shared both. Almost every Saturday, Stevie emptied his pencil sharpener into his. She knew he made his basket messy on purpose. One Saturday, she was carrying the basket from her parents' room. She jiggled it a little so that the contents would sift down and not spill out as she walked. The basket was always so full since there was two of them using it. She managed to shift a shallow layer of Kleenex, which her mother had used for blotting lipstick, and thus exposed the corner of a red ticket. Using the tip of her forefinger and thumb like a pair of forceps, she pulled it out and discovered a 10-ride pass to New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. Used train passes normally do not appear in suburban wastebaskets. They appear in the pockets of train conductors. 9 rides on the pass are marked off in little squares along the bottom edge, and they are punched one at a time as they are used. For the 10th ride, the conductor collects the pass. He takes it, doesn't give it back. Their cleaning lady, who had come on Friday, must have thought that the pass was all used up, since rides 1 through 9 were already punched. The cleaning lady never went to New York, and Claudia's dad never kept a close track on his pocket change or his train passes. Both she and Jamie could travel on the leftover pass, since 2 half fares equals 1 whole. Now they could board the train without having to buy tickets. This would avoid the station master and any stupid questions he might ask. What a find! From a litter of lipstick kisses, Claudia had plucked a free ride. She regarded it as an invitation. They would leave on Wednesday. All right, we are going to pause there, and you can keep coloring, and I will look for your artwork tonight, and have a good weekend. I will read more next week. See ya. Hey guys, we're back, and I'm going to keep reading from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. Remember, this is a great time to work on some art projects, be coloring while you're listening. If you're not great at multitasking, you can just listen them. So we are still on chapter 1, and we're going to finish that chapter today. I'm also going to point out some words that maybe you could look up that maybe we don't know what they are, if you want to keep a list of them, or you can just look them up in a dictionary later. So here we go. On Monday afternoon, Claudia told Jamie at the school bus at the school bus stop that she wanted him to sit with her because she had something important to tell him. Usually, the four Kincaid children neither waited for each other nor walked together, except for Kevin, who was somebody's charge each week. School had begun on Wednesday after Labor Day, therefore the fiscal week, that would be a good one to look up, as Claudia chose to call it, always began on Wednesday. Kevin was only 6 and in the first grade, and he was made much over by everyone, especially by Mrs. Kincaid, Claudia thought. Claudia also thought that he was terribly babied and impossibly spoiled. You would think that her parents would know something about raising children by the time Kevin, their fourth, came along, but her parents hadn't learned. She couldn't remember being anyone's charge when she was in the first grade. Her mother had simply met her at the school bus stop every day. Jamie wanted to sit with his buddy Bruce. They played cards on the bus. Each day meant a continuation of the day before. The game was nothing very complicated, Saxenberg, nothing very refined. They played war. Have you guys ever played that game with cards? That simple game where each player puts down a card and the higher card takes both. If the cards are played the same, there is a war, which involves putting down more cards. The winner then takes all of the war cards. Every night when Bruce got off his stop, he'd take his stack of cards with him. Jamie would do the same. They always took a vow not to shuffle. At the stop before Bruce's house, they would stop playing, wrap a rubber band around each pile, hold the stack under each other's chin, and spit on the deck, saying, "Thou shalt not shuffle." Then each tapped his deck and put it in his pocket. Claudia found the whole procedure disgusting, so she suffered no feelings of guilt when she pulled Jamie away from his precious game. Jamie was mad, though. He was not in a good mood to listen to Claudia. He sat slumped in the seat with his lips pooched out and his eyebrows pulled down on top his eyes. Here's the picture that goes along with it. Whoops, let me make that big. I'm in the way. Okay. He looked like a miniature, clean-shaven Neanderthal man. Neanderthal would be a good word to look up. Claudia didn't say anything. She waited for him to cool off. Jamie spoke first. "Gosh, Claude, why don't you pick on Steve?" Claudia answered, "I thought, Jamie, that you would see that it's obvious that I don't want Steve." "Well," pleaded Jamie, want him. Claudia planned her speech. "I want you, Jamie, for the greatest adventure of our lives." Jamie muttered, "Well, I wouldn't mind if you'd pick on someone else." Claudia looked out the window. She didn't answer. Jamie said, "Well, as long as you've got me here, tell me." Claudia still said nothing and still looked out the window. Jamie became impatient. "I said, as long as you got me here, you might as well tell me." Claudia remained silent. Jamie erupted. "What's the matter with you, Claude? First you bust up my card game and then you don't tell me. It's undecent." "Break up, not bust up. Indecent, not undecent," Claudia corrected. "Oh, baloney, you know what I mean. Now tell me," he demanded. "I've picked you to accompany me on the greatest adventure of our mutual lives," Claudia repeated. "You said that." He clenched his teeth. "Now tell me." "I've decided to run away from home, and I've chosen you to accompany me." "Why pick on me? Why not pick on Steve?" he asked. Claudia sighed. "I don't want Steve. Steve is one of the things in my life that I'm running away from. I want you." Despite himself, Jamie felt flattered. Flattery is as important a machine as the lever, isn't it, Saxenberg? Give it a proper place to rest, and it can move the world. What do you guys think that means? It's kind of an odd saying. It moved Jamie. He stopped thinking, "Why pick on me?" and he started thinking, "I am chosen." He sat up in his seat, unzipped his jacket, put one foot up on the seat, placed his hands over his bent knee, and said out of the corner of his mouth, "Okay, Claude, when do we bust out of here, and how?" Claudius stifled the urge to correct his grammar again. "On Wednesday. Here's the plan. Listen carefully." Jamie squinted his eyes. "Make it complicated, Claude. I like complications." Claudia laughed. "It's got to be simple to work. We'll go on Wednesday because Wednesday is music lesson day, and I'm taking my violin out of its case and am packing it full of clothes. You should do the same with your trumpet case. Take as much clean underwear as possible and socks and at least one other shirt with you." All in a trumpet case? I should have taken up bass fiddle. Bass fiddle. Mr. Gasparino's making fun of me. You can use some of the room in my case. Also use your book bag and take your transistor radio. "Can I wear sneakers?" Jamie asked. Claudia answered, "Of course. Wearing shoes all the time is one of the tyrannies you'll escape by coming with me." You guys know what tyrannies is? You could look that word up. Jamie smiled. Claudia knew that now was the correct time to ask, and she almost managed to make it sound casual. "And bring all your money." She cleared her throat. "By the way, how much money do you have?" Jamie put his foot back down on the floor, looked out the window, and said, "Why do you want to know?" "For goodness sake, Jamie, if we're going to be in this together, then we've got to do it together. I've got to know. How much do you have?" "Can I trust you not to talk?" he said. Claudia was getting mad. "Did I ask you if I could trust you not to talk?" She clamped her mouth shut and let out 2 whiffs of air through her nostrils. Had she done it any harder, it would have been called a snort. "Well, you see, Claude," Jamie whispered, "I have quite a lot of money." Claudia thought that old Jamie would end up being a business tycoon one day, or at least a tax attorney like their grandfather. She said nothing to Jamie. Jamie continued, "Claude, don't tell Mom or Dad, but I gamble. I play those cards game with Bruce for money. Every Friday we count our cards and he pays me. 2 cents for every card I have more than he has and 5 cents for every ace. I always have more cards than he has and at least one more ace." Claudia lost all patience. "Just tell me how much you have. $4, 5, how much?" Jamie nuzzled himself further into the corner of the bus seat and sang, $24.23. Claudia gasped. Jamie, enjoying her reaction, added, "Hang around till Friday and I'll make it an even 25. "How can you do that? Your allowance is only 25 cents. 24.43 plus 25 cents makes $24.68. Details never escaped Claudia. "I'll win the rest with Bruce." "Come on now, James. How can you know on Monday that you'll win on Friday?" "Oh, I just know that I will," he answered. "How do you know?" "I'll never tell." He looked straight at Claudia to see her reaction. She looked puzzled. He smiled, and so did she. For she then felt more certain than ever that she had chosen the correct brother for the partner in escape. They complemented each other perfectly. She was cautious about everything but money, and poor. He was adventurous about everything but money, and rich. More than $24. That would be quite a nice boodle to put in their knapsacks if they were using knapsacks instead of instrument cases. She already had $4.18. They would escape in comfort. Jamie waited while she thought. "Well, what do you say? You want to wait till Friday?" Claudia hesitated only a minute more before she decided. "No, we have to go on Wednesday. I'll write you full details in my plan. You must show the plan to no one. Memorize the details, then destroy the note." "Do I have to eat it?" Jamie said. "Tearing it up and put it in the trash would be much simpler. No one in our family ever takes out the trash but me, and I only go through it if it's sloppy or full of pencil shavings." I'll eat it. I like complications, Jamie said. You must also like wood pulp, Claudia said. That's what paper's made of, you know. I know, Jamie answered. They spoke no more until they got off at the bus stop. Steve got off the bus after Jamie and Claude. Steve yelled, Claude, it's your turn to take Kevin. I'll tell Mom if you forget. Claudia, who'd been walking up ahead with Jamie, stopped short, ran back, grabbed Kevin's hand, and started retracing her steps, pulling him along to the side behind her. I want to walk with Stevie, cried Kevin. That would be just fine with me, Kevin Brat, Claudia answered. But today you happen to be my responsibility. Whose responsibility am I next? He asked. Wednesday starts Steve's turn, Claudia answered. I wish it could be Steve's turn every week, Kevin whined. You just might get your wish. Kevin never realized then or ever that he had been given a clue, and he pouted all the way home. Could you guys tell what the clue was? All right, that was chapter 1. So next we will start chapter 2. And I'm going to make Mr. Gasparino read it and make fun of him when he says something wrong. All right, guys, I'll see you later.